In case you missed the announcement, Escape Motions have recently announced that Rebelle 7 is going to be coming out on December the 14th. So in this very short video, we'll have a look at what they've announced and some of the early purchase discounts that are going to be available. My name's Pete. Welcome to Basement Picasso. So if we have a look at the announcement, Escape Motions have said that Rebelle 7 is going to be coming in December, and they're going to be offering a short period where people can pre-order with some significant discounts, which we're going to have a little look at today. And they've shared a little bit around what new features are going to be offered. So let's take a little look at that. So the first thing is that they're going to be introducing some new metallic materials. And as somebody that a while back I bought a piece of abstract art that had some gold and silver leaf in it. It's something that I've used in some of my own paintings occasionally. So I'm really interested to see what they can do with metallic materials, and their demonstration video just gives you a little bit of a sense of what that might look like. So it's really interesting the way the lighting is sort of reflecting off the surface and the kind of metallic quality that gives. So it certainly looks really interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how that translates to working with it in the program, and then with finished images, what that looks like once you potentially print them out. So that's looking really interesting. They talk a little bit about some enhanced brush tools. There's obviously a very sophisticated brush engine there already, so it'll be really interesting to see what more they're going to add to and expand in that sort of space. The one that really caught my eye was this next one around the improved paper surface. And what they're talking about is the way that the brushes interact with the texture of the paper. And they talk a little bit about improving the paper surface based on ray tracing, and I think that that's something that's worth having a little bit of a look at. Rebelle has always had very good tools that interact with the textures and simulate natural media, and some of these really look very impressive in terms of the sort of natural behaviour, the way that colours run around and seem to interact with the textures. But there's a couple of things that when we start to look a little bit closer, we can start to see that there's a couple of slightly strange interactions with some of the colours and the textures underneath. So what you can possibly start to see is the textures as the water runs into it. What it does is it actually runs into the shadows of some of these textures, and it gives a little bit of a sort of strange effect in terms of the way that it's colouring it. And if you use some of the thick paints and some of the thicker brushes, the way they sort of catch the texture starts to look a little bit strange in terms of filling in from almost underneath, rather than feeling like it's really capturing the texture on top. And what you can find as you start to paint on some of these is it seems to sort of almost flatten out the texture that was there, partly what's doing that is that there's really two different texture mechanisms that are working together. So one is the paper texture, which is really just effectively a photo of a texture working in a sort of sophisticated overlay style mechanism. And it then tries to interact with that texture by looking at the lights and darks of the texture and working out what's high and low from that. And that tends to work very well with sort of very smooth, regular, repeating sorts of textures like canvas and watercolours. But when you get random, thick paint where the shadows are more more cast shadows, because the paint's thick enough that it's actually casting a shadow, what that does is confuse the mechanism of dark being deeper and light being higher. So you can see the way that it interacts and that kind of effect. It's possible to create brushes that interact a little bit more with the texture and bring out some of that texture. But again, as you start to paint on those, then they do tend to go a bit flat, and you get these two fundamentally different mechanisms where you've got the thick impasto that is being put down. So even if that's bringing some of the texture through, it doesn't really sort of keep that consistent with what's lying underneath in terms of that texture picture, or trying to overlay that onto the thicker paint. So this is one that I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do with this. When they talk about ray tracing, if they're able to effectively take the photograph of the texture and then use the ray tracing to get an impasto bump map that more closely represents the actual texture, I think that could make a huge difference in the way that these brushes actually potentially interact with it and make it a much more unified mechanism. So it's going to be something I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can potentially do in that space. The next one that caught my eye was the structures, where it talks about being able to be creative and versatile with structures to add more in-depth patterns under your wet or dry paintings. You're not limited to one paper in the background anymore. This, to me, could be really fun to play with. One of the things that I frequently do when I'm working traditionally is to make textured backgrounds, and that can quite often be composites of flat surfaces, bits of string, offcuts of canvas, thick gesso, all of which build up to make a composite surface. And this is all before I even begin to think about what I'm actually painting. It's just the pure fun of making an interesting surface to begin to work with. So I'm really intrigued to see what this is going to mean with Rebelle. They're talking about being able to use multiple papers. So the opportunity to maybe combine bits of canvas, bits of watercolour, bits of gesso texture. I think that could potentially open up a lot of possibilities. So really keen to see how that's going to shape up. They talk about a number of other improvements. I won't go through each of these individually. And then they're talking about potentially announcing even more. So it does sound like they're really going to be putting quite a bit into version 7. But this is really the key bit of information for people. The pricing, so they've announced they're going to be launching on December the 14th, which is fantastic. Really looking forward to that. But in the interim, between November 22nd and the 30th, they are offering an extremely discounted price. which is going to be for both upgrades and new users. So if you've never bought Rebelle before, these are the prices you can pre-order for. And then in the 2 weeks in the run-up to launch, there's still quite a significant discount, but obviously not quite as good as that initial one. So if you're tempted by Rebelle in the sort of coming weeks, then there's a really, really good opportunity to bag yourself a bargain and grab this before they launch. So I hope that was helpful. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. And a big thank you to all the subscribers on the channel. Crossing 1,000 subscribers is a huge achievement for me. Really pleased with what we've been able to do so far, and looking forward to producing a lot more content for you in 2024. So thanks again. I hope to see you soon.